All right, so today we're going to unpack a phrase you've probably heard thrown around, especially in church circles or even just in deep talks about relationships. Unequally yoked. But what does that actually mean? And where in the world did it come from? Let's get right into it. So, have you ever heard that phrase, unequally yoked? I mean, it's one of those expressions, right? It sounds a little, well, a little old-fashioned. Maybe something you'd hear on a farm. But trust me, what it's getting at is still super relevant to all of us today, especially when we talk about the partnerships we build in our lives. Okay, so what it really means is being paired up with someone whose core beliefs and values are just so different from yours that it's bound to cause problems. We're talking about a serious misalignment. You know, at its heart, it's about a fundamental mismatch. Picture this. Two people are tied together, and they're both trying to move forward, but they're pulling in totally opposite directions. Why? Because what they see as true north on their internal compass just isn't the same. That constant friction, that's the whole idea behind being unequally yoked. But to really get this, we have to go back to where it all started. See, this phrase isn't just some random saying someone made up. It's actually a super powerful and visual metaphor, and it comes straight from the world of ancient farming. So, let's break this down. First up, you've got a yoke, which is basically this big wooden beam that connects two animals, like oxen, so they can pull a heavy load together. Makes sense, right? But then, imagine a farmer tries to team up a huge, strong ox with, say, a much smaller, weaker donkey. What do you think happens? Well, they can't walk in a straight line. It's impossible. The big ox just overpowers the little guy, and instead of plowing a nice, straight field, they just end up going in circles. They get nowhere. Okay, so that's the farming image. But how did that get applied to, well, to people, to our relationships? For that, we have to jump into its scriptural origins, where this whole idea makes a huge leap from the farm to matters of faith.
Believe it or not, the phrase actually has roots way back in the Old Testament, in Deuteronomy, where there's a literal command not to plow with an ox and a donkey together. But the key passage, the one everyone points to, comes from the Apostle Paul in the New Testament. In 2 Corinthians, he takes that simple farming rule and turns it into this really deep principle about our spiritual lives and our relationships.
And here it is, the key verse. Do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. For what partnership has righteousness with lawlessness? See what he's doing? Paul starts asking all these rhetorical questions. He's basically saying, hey, think about it. How can two things that are complete opposites really be partners? He's painting a picture of stark contrast to get his point across.
And he doesn't stop there. To really drive the point home, he lays out these powerful opposites: righteousness versus lawlessness, light versus darkness, Christ versus Belial. He's making it crystal clear that he's not talking about disagreeing on what to have for dinner. No, he's talking about worldviews that are fundamentally incompatible. The imagery is so strong, it's like you're either pulling toward the light or you're pulling toward the darkness. There's no middle ground in this metaphor.
All right, so when most people hear this phrase, their minds immediately jump to one thing: marriage. Specifically, a believer marrying a non-believer. And while that's a huge application, the principle itself is actually way broader than just that. It really extends to any deep partnership where your core values are at stake.
Yeah, and this is so important to get. It's not just about who you marry. The real question, the one at the heart of it all, is this: does this partnership I'm in force me to pull against my most foundational principles? If you find yourself saying yes to that, well, that's when the whole unequally yoked idea really comes into play. And this can show up in some really practical, everyday parts of our lives. Think about business partnerships, for example, or even your closest friendships, the people who really influence you and the big decisions you make. Let's make this super concrete. Say you're starting a business, and for you, total honesty and integrity are non-negotiable. But your business partner? They're kind of willing to cut corners, maybe fudge the numbers a little to make a bigger profit. All of a sudden, you're yoked together. You're pulling the same load, your company, but you're pulling in ethically opposite directions. That's going to create some serious tension, right? It's just inevitable. Someone's values are going to have to bend. Okay, so we've looked at the farming metaphor, we've seen the scripture, we've talked about how it applies today. So what's the big takeaway here? What's the underlying principle we're supposed to get from all this?
Well, when you boil it all down, the core idea is really about protecting your own integrity. It's about maintaining who you are. The point isn't to build a wall around yourself and avoid anyone who thinks differently. Not at all. It's about being incredibly thoughtful about who you hitch your wagon to, who you enter into these deep, binding partnerships with. It's all about making sure you can keep moving in the direction that your core convictions are pulling you without getting dragged off course.
And that really leaves us with one last question to think about. It's a question that applies to pretty much any important partnership you have. In any given partnership in your life, which direction are you pulling? Are you and that other person plowing in the same direction, making progress together? Or do you find yourselves just pulling against each other, stuck, going in circles? It's a really powerful thing to reflect on.